Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Chapter 6 Dragon Frost Sky Cold Sword. Outside the door of a luxurious weapons store, there was a lot of traffic and hustle and bustle. Covering an area of several thousand square meters, it is one of the largest weapons stores in Xuanjing City. Many luxury cars are parked at the door. A large number of students crowded the door of the weapons store. On the walls, there are countless knives, swords and other cold weapons hanging in a dazzling array. Materials vary. There was even a long sword made of pure mysterious cold stone. This sword is so beautiful, reflecting the cold blue light. Very eye-catching. All the students were fascinated and stopped to stare. But the price of this sword is too high and no one can afford it. So I can only look at it. Su Ming also glanced at the sword with his peripheral vision. Fake, he just said coldly in his heart. In his previous life, he often visited this weapons store, and gradually got to know the owner here. He even had a drink with the boss here and talked all night long. So he knew that this sword was fake and the real one was hidden in the boss's warehouse. The authenticity of this sword is indeed extraordinary. It is a long sword of diamond quality. It's called Longshuang Tianan sword. A slash of the sword can even completely freeze the blood in the monster's body, and then break it into pieces with a single strike. If used by a sword master, this sword would be extremely powerful. Unfortunately, Su Ming cannot afford it at the moment. After all, this sword is also the treasure of this store, so it is naturally expensive. So his main target was not this sword in the first place. Su Ming's arrival caused quite a commotion among the student body. Hey, look, isn't that Su Ming? Sword Master Su Ming is here. You are indeed handsome. A girl was already starry-eyed. Since ancient times, professional swordsmen with high rankings have been very handsome. Although it is weak in the early stage, it is really handsome. Su Ming is no exception. Wow, what a man of the hour. He also came to buy weapons. That's right. After all, tomorrow is the novice dungeon. Even if he has a 10-star talent, he wouldn't dare to overdo it. He is born with full attributes at level 10. To say he is a peerless genius is an understatement. If he were not a swordsman, he would probably have shocked the entire province. It's a pity that his career is a bit stretched. The students whispered among themselves. Su Mingquan pretended not to hear. He walked straight to the counter, his steps steady. At this time, a young woman in her 20s walked out of the student group. She blocked Su Ming's way. Su Ming frowned slightly and stopped. He didn't know this woman. Why was she blocking his way? He looked up. I saw this woman, wearing a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, black stockings, and a hot figure. It looks elegant and luxurious. Absolutely no shortage of money. She was obviously frightened for a moment by Su Ming's cold eyes. Those are the eyes of a killer, which can only be tempered through many life and death fights. She thought it was an illusion. Soon, she returned to normal. Sorry, this classmate, I have no ill intentions. As she spoke, she showed a royal sister-like smile. Then, he handed over a business card and put it in Su Ming's hand. I am Zhang Lan, the Deputy Director of Zhong'an Consortium. Today, on behalf of the Zhong'an Consortium, I will cover all the weapons purchases you make here. She made bold statements. As soon as these words came out, all the students around him took a breath. Weapons shop, all expenses paid. This is truly a grand gesture among the grand gestures. Among the students around here, there are also people who live in villas, whose parents have strong careers, and have some spare money at home. But among them, no one dared to say that the cost is all covered. After all, the weapon store is one of the most expensive places in the world. It is impossible for ordinary families to spend casually here. Looking at her seductive smile, Su Ming's face was calm. Oh, all inclusive. May I ask Miss Zhang Lan, what is the price? Everything in the world is inseparable from the word interest. Su Ming didn't know her at all. When the two met for the first time, it was absolutely impossible for her to help out with money for no reason. Su Ming has been a human being for 2 generations, and he is very clear about this. Hearing Su Ming's calm answer, she was a little surprised. She had inquired a long time ago that Su Ming was a poor orphan without the support of his parents. He came here to buy weapons now, and he was afraid that he was out of pocket. It was precisely because of this that she paid for the help. Only when the other party needs it can there be a transaction. This is the businessman's vision. But what she didn't expect was that Su Ming was as smart as she was. Did not immediately agree to come down. Face this temptation without being swayed. She secretly admired it. It seems that student Su Ming is not only extremely talented, but also extremely intelligent. She praised first. You guessed right, I do have something to ask of you. As expected, Zhang Lan smiled lightly. She greeted the crowd. Then, a girl in Xingyi with an exquisite figure came out. Su Ming noticed that she was wearing a body protection barrier ring in her hand. This is an extremely expensive item. Once she takes fatal damage, the ring explodes instantly, forming a barrier for her to resist the attack. It is enough to show that her family has abundant financial resources. This is my sister, Zhang Yunqing. As long as you team up with her and protect her to complete the challenge in the novice dungeon, I will fund and help you buy a weapon. How? She smiled confidently, her voice full of courage. Money is the source of self-confidence. Su Ming heard the words, but he was unmoved. He looked up and down the girl in front of him, Zhang Yunqing. Zhang Yunqing's face was calm, facing Su Ming, neither humble nor overbearing. Although her talent is slightly inferior to Su Ming, she is rich. Faintly, there was still a little pride in her eyebrows. Su Ming stared at her with a stern face and eyes as calm as water. This Zhang Yunqing was the same age as him. They are all new job changers this year. But, she was a little too thin. It's no wonder that his sister wants to let him lead her. This is normal. Su Ming has long been familiar with it. Only the job changers who awakened for the first time can enter the novice instance. All family masters and bodyguards are not allowed to enter. This means that the second young lady of the Zhang family will enter the dangerous zone alone without anyone to protect her. This might be her first time. In this case, their family naturally needed a powerful expert to escort her. As for the novice dungeons, they are basically newcomers who change jobs. No one is naturally high level, so the only choice is basically to choose from those with strong enough qualifications. And myself is the perfect candidate. First, I have a high talent, and my attributes are naturally stronger than ordinary people. Second, I am poor enough to be easily bought. Su Ming quickly concluded the reason. Although the profession is a sword master, the skills are not as strong as others, but the attributes are strong enough. Moreover, among the newcomers in Xuanjing City, among the talented people, only he is easier to buy. Other geniuses are basically not short of money. He touched his chin and looked at Zhang Lan. Showing a harmless expression, he said with a smile. Okay, then I want to buy the Longshuang Tianan sword. Chapter 7. Okay, then I want to buy the Longshuang Tianan sword. As soon as this statement came out, Zhang Lan's eyes trembled. She never expected that Su Ming would be so open-minded. The diamond-level weapon, Longshuang Tianan sword, is the treasure of this store. The price is as high as tens of millions of advent coins. Even she couldn't take it out immediately. She originally thought that a silver-level weapon would be enough to send this poor student who had never seen the world. The students around him also had slightly startled eyes. Is Su Ming a little too thick-skinned? Although he is the new attribute king, don't forget that his profession is a sword master and he is very weak in the early stage. Yes, he really surprised me. My impression of him has been greatly reduced. That's a diamond-level weapon. He's just a new job changer now. Whether he can even equip it is a question. Listening to what people said, Su Ming didn't care at all. In his mind, he only has his own goals. Zhang Lan's eyes were a little embarrassed. Su Ming opened her mouth like this and it was hard for her to get off the stage. She narrowed her eyes slightly and her expression became serious. Are you serious? Su Ming's eyes were clear and she nodded. I'm serious, what's the problem, sister? He tilted his head slightly and pretended to be confused. This look made Zhang Lan even more angry. But she couldn't be exposed. Finally, she sighed. Sorry, classmate Su Ming, can you change it? In any case, she could not continue to let Su Ming go just to save face. For businessmen, money always comes first. Weighing the pros and cons is the most important thing. Although her family has money, they cannot spend it endlessly. The Longshuang Tianan sword is really expensive. I think your current combat power is not worth my investment. If you change it to a silver quality weapon, I would be happy. She gave a professional smile. Su Ming shook his head, becoming very determined at this moment. Forget about it. I only want this sword, nothing else. Su Ming's voice was flat. She stepped forward gently, and the sound of high heels was very clear. Su Ming smelled the expensive perfume on her body up close, but her expression remained cold and unchanging. Are you sure? She asked. Su Ming's face is like an iceberg. Sure, he nodded. Zhong Lan shook his head slightly, with some clouds in his eyes. She said solemnly, okay then. Yunqing, let's go. Her eyes turned cold and she pulled Zhang Yunqing away. Zhang Yunqing turned her head and glanced at Su Ming. At this moment, her eyes narrowed slightly. This was the first time she saw that her sister did not gain the upper hand in negotiations. This made her feel that Su Ming, an alumnus, was not only extremely talented. The mental aspect is not simple either. What a strange man. After the two left, Su Ming took a deep breath. He had no intention of accepting the deal. But if you refuse too bluntly, the other party will inevitably continue to pester you. That's why he said he wanted to buy the Longshuang Tianan sword just to force the opponent back. He knew that it was impossible for the other party to buy him such an expensive sword. It just so happened that Su Ming was planning to go to the most dangerous area and kill the hidden boss alone. If he accepted the deal and had to take Zhang Yunqing with him to protect her, how could Su Ming go to that dangerous area? He didn't feel regretful about missing this free weapon. There is no free lunch in the world. Everyone looked at Su Ming and there was a burst of noise. He is obviously very poor, but he took the initiative to negotiate the collapse of this deal and give up the opportunity to get weapons for free, which really puzzles people. Su Ming remained expressionless, pretending he hadn't heard. He walked through the crowd, walked forward alone, and walked to the front of the counter. Said to a waitress, "Take down that stone sword." Su Ming's face was flat, but his words were startling. When the waitress heard this, her eyes froze slightly. She followed Su Ming's fingers and looked up. I saw a gray stone sword hanging in the glass cabinet on the wall. Potholes and ugly appearance. Indistinctly, it can be seen that it is the prototype of a long sword. This is almost a weapon embryo. Don't talk about beating and injuring people, I'm afraid it will take a lot of effort to injure people. Will someone really buy it? The waitress was amazed. Are you sure you want this weapon? She opened her red lips slightly and asked. She also knows the name of Su Ming, who is now the 10-star swordsman in Xuanjing City and a genius in number 1 middle school. Naturally, she didn't want to sell him a junk weapon, causing him to be buried in the novice dungeon. So out of kindness, she asked Su Ming. Su Ming insisted and nodded. The waitress was also helpless, so she had to operate a few times on the screen in front of her. Then, the glass cabinet opened automatically. With a light hook of her finger, the counter moved down, presenting the stone sword in front of Su Ming. Su Ming held the stone sword and weighed it. Nice weight. A faint golden light flashed in his eyes. Whoosh. Almost just for a moment. It is the eye of insight. He scanned the information of this stone sword. Open black lens bracket weapon embryo, silver close black lens bracket. The fierce beast in a certain F-level dungeon is a reward for bursting out. Close black lens bracket. It looks like an ordinary stone longsword, but after breaking the stone shell, it can be unsealed, and there is a silver quality sword in it. Close black lens bracket. This is the sword. In Su Ming's previous life, he saw a student with his own eyes and bought this sword. Then he accidentally smashed the stone package in the novice copy, revealing its original appearance. That's why he knew the truth about this sword. Very good, how much is the price? Holding the stone sword in one hand, Su Ming asked. His strength attribute has 10 points, which is almost 2 or 3 times that of other students. So he held it with one hand, and it didn't feel heavy at all. In front of the waitress, a transparent screen panel appeared, revealing in front of Su Ming. This student, according to our store manager's request, every year on the Awakening Day, students can get discounts based on their awakening level. Professors with attributes above 5 stars can buy weapons at 50% of the price. The original price of this stone sword is 1,000 Advent coins. The current discounted price for you is 500 Advent coins. Hearing this, Su Ming nodded slightly. He was quite satisfied with this price, and it was within the acceptable range. After all, any other silver weapon would cost about 10,000. Take advantage of this opportunity and grab it. Su Ming knew very well that if the stone seal was broken, the price of this sword would have to be at least 10 times higher. Su Ming's savings are less than 800 now. This sword, he is bound to obtain. With a slight movement in his mind, his personal balance appeared in front of him. All Blue Star has already been digitalized, and transactions are also completed with data. In just an instant, the account balance was transferred. Open black lens bracket transaction complete close black lens bracket. The sword immediately became Su Ming's item. Thank you for your purchase. The waitress bowed slightly, showing a half-smile expression. Chapter 8. Su Ming held the stone sword and turned against the current. He walked slowly towards the door. All the onlookers were shocked at this moment. Su Ming, is he poor and crazy? Although this sword is cheap, can it kill monsters? Hey, buying such a stone sword, he is looking for death. He doesn't think that because he is born with high attributes, he is really invincible. New job changers only have one initial skill, so what if the attributes are higher? Among the crowd, there was a male student wearing glasses with a dignified expression. This kind of stone weapon often explodes in dungeons. It's basically rubbish, and it will break when you hit it. But there is also a very small probability that a weapon will be sealed with a stone. The weapons in it will be of high value. Could it be possible for him to take a gamble? He thought about it and analyzed it. What this student said caused 1,000 waves with one stone. However, it didn't calm everyone down. On the contrary, it aroused the sneer of everyone. Some students even came to a conclusion. HMPH, my father is also a blacksmith. I know best how low the probability is. Immediately someone agreed. Right, I dare say that if all the hundreds of stone weapons in this weapon shop are combined and smashed together, none of them will be able to produce a good product. This kind of stone weapon, not to mention 100%, at least 99.9%, is rubbish. Someone narrowed their eyes slightly and said slowly. Using 500 advent coins to bet on such a tiny probability. I can only say that he is an idiot. Su Ming listened to the words of the people around him, but slowly stopped in his tracks. The corner of his mouth hooked slightly, smiled slightly, and said, "Is there anyone here to make a bet?" He said loudly. At the same time, hold up the stone sword in your hand. If I smash this sword and produce a good weapon, give me 3,000 advent coins. Otherwise, I'll give you 5,000 advent coins. Who dares to come? Su Ming looked around. His voice spread throughout the entire store. Hearing this, let alone students, even the waitresses thought he was crazy. Stone weapons are a common settlement reward in dungeons. But stone weapons are basically consumables, which can be broken when knocked. It is true that some high-level copies of stone weapons have a certain probability of bursting out of stone-sealed weapons. But that probability is extremely low, definitely 1 in 1,000, or even 1 in 10,000. How dare Su Ming gamble with such a small probability? Even their store manager, an experienced blacksmith, didn't see any magic in this stone weapon. This Su Ming seems to have a plan in mind. So let alone the students, the staff here all want to come to participate in the gamble. After all, Su Ming is like giving money away. Everyone here is not optimistic about Su Ming. For a while, many students rushed forward, wanting to participate in the gambling game. Whether the family is rich or not, all are welcome to participate. In the end, a burly male student moved the fastest. He rushed in front of Su Ming with one step, showing an excited smile. As if, the money has already been picked up. I'll bet with you. He grinned. Good. Su Ming was calm and breezy. At this moment, he used his insightful eyes to see through the student's information. Open black lens bracket Yang Ding close black lens bracket. Level 1, 0, 100 experience points. Occupation. Meat shield warrior combat occupation. Strength. 9 points. Physique. 9 points. Agility. 5 points. Spirit. 5 points. Luck. 7 points. Skill. Full force / exhaust all stamina and gather it into 1 / The sum of all attributes in the 5 dimensions reached 35 points. Divide by 5 and convert it, which is the innate attribute of 7 stars. It can be considered an extraordinary talent. Looking at him, Su Ming's eyes were solemn. Yang Ding is a familiar face. This is a rich second generation who behaves extremely domineeringly in school and often bullies poor students. In the previous life, Su Ming was tricked by this guy once in the novice copy. Seeing this person, Su Ming narrowed his eyes slightly. It's really a narrow road between enemies. Su Ming didn't feel any pain at all for cheating him. Come on, let's sign the gambling contract. Su Ming thought slightly. A panel appeared in front of him. The information about this bet is written on it. Bet agreement. Does this stone-long sword contain a stone-sealed weapon? Close black lens bracket. If so, Su Ming wins. Close black lens bracket. If not, Yang Ding wins. Close black lens bracket. Su Ming chips, 3,000 advent coins. Yang Ding chips, 5,000 advent coins. Once two people sign, they can never go back on it. Even if Su Ming wins, she can only get 3,000, but if she loses, she has to pay 5,000. Moreover, the probability of stone-sealed weapons is already very low. No matter how you look at it, this is an unfair gamble for Su Ming. The students looked at this scene and were really shocked. Wow, he's so serious that he even signed a contract. If you lose and can't get the money out, the interest will skyrocket all the time. With contract restrictions, no one can cheat now. Yang Ding looked at this information with some hesitation. But soon, he made up his mind. How can you be a man if you dare not gamble when the odds of winning are so great? Besides, 3,000 advent coins is not a huge amount of money considering his family background. His bet this time was also to dampen Su Ming's spirit. He is one of the most talented students in number 1 middle school and college, besides Su Ming, Yan Zi, and Zhang Tang. Like Ji Yao, he has an innate 7-star attribute. Originally, his reputation should not be small. However, his limelight was completely overshadowed by Su Ming. As soon as the 10-star attribute came out, let alone the 7-star, the 8-star Zhang Tang and the 9-star Yan Zi were overshadowed. This made him feel unhappy for a long time. Today, I finally seized the opportunity to challenge Su Ming head-on. He will become famous by stepping on Su Ming's shoulders. He immediately signed his name on the contract. Su Ming looked at Yang Ding with an expressionless face. The fish is hooked. Yang Ding crossed his arms and stared at Su Ming, with a sneer on his lips. He still doesn't know what fate awaits him. Go ahead and break your stone. To be honest, I really doubt that a poor guy like you can afford 5,000 to give me. Then, he said in a sarcastic voice. But before he could finish his sentence, he stopped abruptly. His expression changed from triumphant to extremely shocked. His eyes were trembling, because, at this moment, Su Ming had already smashed the stone sword in his hand. Click. A crisp loud noise spread throughout the entire weapons store. Everyone in the audience seemed to be petrified. The scene stopped for a moment. The original noise turned into silence. Stone chips peel off. I saw a simple jet black steel sword appearing among them. 3 feet long front. Among them, there are some dark red lines, flowing like blood. Chapter 9. Black Iron Chiffung Sword, Silver Low Grade. Special Affix Drinking Red. After this sword slashes a monster, it can absorb the contaminated blood and heal the owner's injury. Close black lens bracket. Su Ming scanned the sword's information with his insightful eyes and was very satisfied. He held the sword and swung it casually, feeling how sharp it was. The most powerful thing is that after slashing monsters, you can restore blood to yourself. It's the equivalent of bringing a mobile therapist. You know, therapists are a very rare type of auxiliary professions. It is very expensive to team up with them, and you need to have strong strength. But with this sword, I don't need any healers. He held the sword, feeling like he was commanding him. With a wave, whoosh whoosh, the sword light is like cold dew, extremely sharp. Even the air is faintly cut open. Looking at this sword, all the onlookers felt as if they had been struck by lightning. The waitresses couldn't close their jaws. The whole shop was extremely silent for a while. After a long time, a student wiped his eyes and said in disbelief. He really knocked out the stone-sealed weapon. Some people's pupils dilated, pointing at the sword. Also, judging from the appearance, this sword is not of bronze quality yet. At the very least, it's at the silver level. People's voices burst out in an instant. It was extremely noisy. Su Ming and Yang Ding, standing in the middle of the crowd, were swallowed by the sound. When Yang Ding saw the sword, his face turned pale. He unconsciously took half a step back, somewhat in disbelief. No, impossible. He held it in for a long time before he managed to hold back 2 words. His eyes were dazed, staring at the sword in shock. The black steel, the sharp edge flickers. The dark red lines, like the blood of a living body, flow in it. At least a silver weapon. His breathing was visibly disturbed. I thought it was my highlight moment, but I didn't expect to be turned against the general. With a flat face, Su Ming stretched out his hand to him. Yang Ding, pay for it. As if he had expected all this. Yang Ding's heart was in a mess. He didn't expect that he would lose. No, your weapon has not been identified yet. I don't know what grade it is, he said hesitantly. This is his last sophistry and struggle. However, this time, Su Ming has not waited for rebuttal. The students who watched the excitement spoke out one after another. I don't want to admit it, but Su Ming did win. Yang Ding, just admit it. Identified or not, it doesn't matter. In the rules, as long as there is a sword out of the stone, Su Ming wins. The eyes of the students are discerning. Yang Ding could no longer regret it under the hot eyes of everyone. Moreover, in the gambling contract, it has already been shown that Su Ming won. Open black lens bracket. Su Ming wins. Close black lens bracket. He gritted his teeth and said very reluctantly. You're lucky. Then, he transferred 3,000 from his account and handed it over to Su Ming. No way, the contract is set. Even the King of Heaven and Lao Su can't break the contract. This is the rule of the world. If he defaults, then every minute and every second, there will be huge interest rollovers. So he can only pay now. After Su Ming got the money, he smiled slightly. Thank you. Then he didn't leave the shop directly. Instead, he turned around and returned to the waitress in the weapon shop. I want to buy a scabbard, an ebony scabbard that fits my sword. The waitress was a little dazed. It took a moment for him to react. Oh, good. The waitresses were all in a hurry because of the excessive shock. She took out a precision instrument and began to measure the thickness, width, and weight of the black steel blood-drinking sword. Tailor-made a scabbard, it can be completed in no time. To customize the scabbard, you need 1,000 advent coins. Originally, Su Ming couldn't afford it. But now, he has money. Seeing this scene, the student group immediately exploded. Holy crap, he spent the money right away and bought a scabbard. He simply put Yang Ding's face on the ground and rubbed it. Isn't this a typical example of getting a good deal and still being nice? It sucks so much hatred. The students clenched their fists. Looking at his appearance, is it possible that he already knew there was a sword in the stone? It's definitely possible. After all, sword masters have all kinds of weird skills. Maybe one of them includes the ability to sense sword weapon data. After a while, Su Ming got an antique ebony scabbard. Tie behind your back with a rope. The black steel sword was inserted perfectly inside. Paired with his black clothes, he looked like a knight. Su Ming slowly left the weapon shop. From beginning to end, his expression remained calm. Yang Ding looked at this scene, his face turning blue and white. Almost fuming with anger. His voice was trembling, and he said in a deep voice when Su Ming passed by. Su Ming, I remember you. Su Ming heard this and took out his earwax. Oh, then, the figure disappeared into the street. Return to your private quarters. Su Ming unsheathed his sword. He waved it casually a few times. Buzz buzz. The crisp sword chant sounded, very clear and sweet. I have the original sword body talent, which can enhance all my sword skills. But I don't have sword skills yet. He touched his chin, thinking for a while. The skill scroll is expensive. I don't have much money left, so I can't afford it. I can only hope that the sword skill scroll will be released in the novice copy. He murmured. Suddenly, his eyes flashed. By the way, I also have a talent, the sublimation of all things. A skill that can upgrade the loot exploded in any copy. Su Ming hasn't used it yet. He immediately put the sword in front of him and used his sublimation of all things talent. A burst of sacred golden light flickered. Suddenly, the long sword in front of me deformed. After a while, the light faded. The blade of the sword is clearly visible. I saw that this sword was even more pure and pitch black, and the bloody lines in it seemed to extend many ways. The whole sword looks more bloodthirsty and dark, and it looks terrifying. Sublimation success. Xuangang blood sword, silver top grade. Drinking red. After this sword cuts a monster, it can absorb the contaminated blood and heal the holder's injuries. Close black lens bracket. Bloodshed. After killing a monster with this sword, it can temporarily increase the holder's attributes by 5 points for 30 seconds. Close black lens bracket. Directly upgraded from low-grade silver to high-grade silver. Su Ming was extremely surprised. This talent is truly amazing. There is an additional special effect, blood killing. After killing the enemy, you can get a short-term buff state, which increases all your attributes. Not bad. Moreover, after sublimation, the sword's material became heavier. The texture is sharper. Su Ming raised his hand and struck the knife directly on his desk. Swish. The wooden table suddenly broke apart without any explanation. The cross-section is as smooth as a mirror. Not even a sound was made. You can see how sharp the blade is. Su Ming was a little dumbfounded. The power was stronger than he expected. Much sharper than before sublimation. He glanced at the sky outside the window. It's night. His voice was flat. This means that the time when he and Ren Xiaoman met. Arrive. He slowly left the dormitory, alone. There was killing intent in his eyes. Chapter 10. In the evening, Su Ming stood on the roof of the building. In his pocket was an ordinary dagger. To use killing sword, the power of the dagger is the greatest. If you use a sword, you can barely activate the killing sword, but its power will be greatly reduced. That's right, he wants to use his strongest moves to kill Ren Xiaoman. His face was flat, and there was no vicious intention to kill someone in it. A real killer will never reveal his killing intent before making a move. On the way here, he had avoided the crowd as much as possible. After all, he was going to commit murder later, so he naturally didn't want others to see it. The moon is sparse and the breeze is blowing. There is a gap in the moon of this world. Looking at the past, there is a sacred beauty. On the stairs, footsteps could be heard. Su Ming frowned slightly. She is coming. Su Ming, the place where you asked me to meet, how could it be such a place? Too out of the way. Far away, I heard her complaints. Su Ming looked over. I saw her walking quickly tonight, wearing a simple and elegant black dress. The cardigans on the chest were not fastened tightly, and the spring was hard to hide. I don't know if they came too hastily, or on purpose. If it was a young boy, he would have been taken care of long ago. Su Ming remained expressionless, and said coldly, "You're here." She nodded. There was some impatience in his eyes that couldn't be concealed. Su Ming keenly caught it. Although I said I changed my mind, I will test you after a while. Only then can I consider whether I want to be with you or not. During this time, it depends on your performance. As she spoke, she showed a somewhat meaningful expression. Hearing this, Su Ming just smiled coldly and didn't speak. Test for a while. What a wonderful modifier. The truth is actually endless pua. During this period of time, she will hang herself and let herself be a hardworking slave. Consecrate a lot of resources. In the previous life, I was tricked. This time, I will never make the same mistakes again. In the previous life, Su Ming worked hard day and night in the dungeon. But most of the benefits were handed over to her. Looking back now, I was simply hopelessly stupid. He treated her heart and soul well, but what he got in return was death and betrayal. Su Ming's smile looked bloodthirsty under the moonlight, sending a chill down Ren Xiaoman's spine. Why are you smiling so terribly? She suddenly discovered that Su Ming seemed to be a little different from before. But as for the difference, she couldn't tell for a while. Su Ming, expressionless, walked towards her slowly. The closer she got, the more she could feel the piercing killing intent emanating from Su Ming. She felt the hairs all over her body stand on end. She felt that something was wrong, and she began to feel a little scared, so she backed away slowly. Su Ming, don't come near me. She raised her hand and made a defensive gesture, her voice flustered. Su Ming simply ignored it. He has made up his mind. With one lunge, he sprinted up. At the same time, he took out a short dagger from his pocket. The action is done in one go, so coherent. The moment she saw this dagger, Ren Xiaoman's eyes were filled with horror. She never expected that Su Ming would become so ruthless. As soon as he makes a move, he will kill her. Now, she finally understood why Su Ming asked her to meet in such a remote place. She is a life professional, and her attributes are also very low. How could it be Su Ming's opponent? You dare to touch me, Master Zhang Tang will not let you go." In desperation, she roared. Su Ming showed a puzzled expression on purpose, and stopped in his tracks. "Oh, why did you mention Zhang Tang?" She mistakenly thought that Su Ming was shocked. After all, the Zhang family is one of the 3 most powerful families in the Dragon Kingdom. Absolutely colossal. Su Ming, a poor boy, even with a 10-star talent, couldn't compete with him. She sneered. "HMPH, let me tell you. It's Master Zhang Tang, let me approach you. You must have guessed it, I don't have to pretend anymore." She simply broke the jar, with a mean look on her face. "Su Ming, don't even think about it. You are such a poor man, how could you make Miss Ben change her mind? In this world, no matter how strong your 10-star talent is, it can't compare to his Zhang family's heritage." After saying this, she seemed to let out a bad breath. "It's ridiculous that you wanted to kill me just now. Zhang Tang's name alone can make you dare not make a move. Whether this matter is successful or not, I have a reward of 100,000 advent coins. Since it's revealed now, it just saves me trouble. Thank you, Su Ming." Her smile was cold and merciless. However, what surprised her was, hearing these words, Su Ming didn't tremble with anger, nor showed a shocked expression. "Only the clouds are calm and the wind is light. Calmness is the scariest thing." "Very good." Su Ming smiled lightly. "Then are you ready to die?" His face became cold and he asked. Ren Xiaoman was stunned when he heard this. She originally thought that Su Ming was too scared to make a move by the name of young Master Zhang Tang. That's why she dared to insult unscrupulously. But Su Ming's calm demeanor was a bit terrifying. In her heart, she became a little scared. But on the surface, she is still holding on. "HMPH, do you dare to touch me? I really don't believe it." Before she finished speaking, Su Ming made a move. He didn't want to talk too much. For this woman, he was completely disappointed. He directly held the dagger and rushed forward. Extremely fast. The murderous intent in his eyes is terrifying. At this moment, Ren Xiaoman finally panicked. She saw that Su Ming was determined to kill her. Etc. Don't, she screamed. Su Ming had no expression on her face and kept moving. Killing God with a knife, activate. His whole body turned into a bloody stream of light. The next moment, a bright blood-colored thin line passed diagonally. It was as if the night sky was divided into 2 halves. The blood mark drawn by the sword light stayed in midair for a long time and never dispersed. The extremely majestic killing intent swept over the sky and covered the earth. Like a torrent of rivers, Ren Xiaoman's whole body was swallowed up in it in an instant. At this moment, she felt as if she was in a sea of blood and a mountain of corpses, with endless wretched souls howling beside her. Su Ming is like a demon, slashing with a bloody knife. This knife cut her neck perfectly. Blood spurted. Her eyes were blank and she looked at Su Ming in shock. This knife is too fast. It's like teleporting. It was completely beyond her ability to understand. She felt that not only her body, but also her will had been chopped into pieces by this knife. This is simply not a skill that a level 1 newcomer can possess. Her eyes were full of disbelief. All the arrogance completely dissipated. Her body slumped down helplessly. On the neck, blood spurted out like a spring. What Su Ming cut was the artery. Her death took only a moment. To her, it was not a long time, but it was enough for her to savor and regret. Until she died, she still retained extreme shock in her eyes. It's full of resentment and unwillingness, and a bit hysterical. Su Ming flicked the dagger to dry the blood, then put it into her personal space. Su Ming lowered his head and looked at her body with a cold expression. I have to admit that this woman is indeed very beautiful. After all, she is the school beauty of number 1 middle school. She has a curvy figure, a crystal clear face, and skin as fair as jade. The way she dresses is also very stylish. No wonder I was fascinated by her in my previous life. It's a pity that she is beautiful on the outside but loses on the inside. When the heart is rotten, no matter how beautiful the skin is, it is useless. Revenge was taken. Su Ming was extremely happy. But at the same time, he also felt weak and in a daze. This is a sign of mental exhaustion. In this world, no matter what profession you are in, as long as you use skills, you need to use mental power. Whether it's the mage's fireball or the warrior's cleave. All skills require mental energy to be activated. If your mental energy is exhausted, you will fall into such a situation and become very weak. I need some sleep to make up for it. In extreme cases, supplements may even be needed to fully recover. The Killing God Sword. The consumption is indeed too great. With my current level, I can't use the full version at all. Su Ming's breathing was a little heavy. It took a while to recover. Now as long as I use the killing sword, my physical energy will be exhausted immediately. The mental power will also be completely consumed. In other words, this sword is his ultimate trump card. With one slash of the sword, if the enemy is not dead, Su Ming will have to be slaughtered by others. Although the power is not as high as the peak, it is still invincible in front of low-level monsters and humans. Thinking back to those days, a true god-killing sword could even cut into pieces of space and break through all defenses. Even the strange beasts in S-level dungeons can be killed. That's really scary. However, Su Ming did not have any nostalgia for her previous life. In his previous life, he was able to reach rank 8 without relying on anyone, relying solely on talent and hard work. In this life, his future will definitely be higher. The novice copy, even the boss, shouldn't be able to withstand my killing sword. Su Ming stared at the knife mark that was gradually dissipating in midair and analyzed. Especially in terms of killing speed, it's extremely fast. This sword is so fast that almost no one in the world can dodge it. It can even be said that Su Ming is currently in the same realm and can kill anyone with a single click. What is a point kill? In other words, if your name is called, you will die. Must kill. If Su Ming wants you to die on the 3rd watch, there is no way you can live until the 4th watch. The killing sword is powerful enough. This also gave Su Ming the confidence to enter the dungeon tomorrow and challenge the hidden boss. He slowly squatted down and found Ren Xiaoman's mobile phone in her pocket. The first thing to do is to delete the chat history between yourself and her. Be sure not to leave any traces. After deleting the traces, Su Ming was preparing to destroy the phone. But suddenly, he discovered the chat records between Ren Xiaoman and Zhang Tang. Su Ming clicked and took a look. June 7th is today. Ren Xiaoman. Master Zhang, I plan to capture Su Ming tonight. Zhang Tang. Very good. Extract all his value. When he grows up in a few years and has enough treasures, we will find an opportunity to kill him in the dungeon. Whether everything happens today or not, I will credit your account 100,000. Ren Xiaoman. Brother Zhang, you are so generous, I like it so much. Haha, this silly boy doesn't know that I only care about his interests. It's not like I am completely devoted to you, Brother Zhang. Zhang. Haha, bitch. After you're with him, don't forget to take the time to communicate with me. Ren. Of course, Brother Zhang, your skills in bed are something others don't have. That's exactly what I like about you. Quote. The chat between the two was a bit unpleasant to watch. Su Ming's wrist moved slightly. With a snap, the phone was crushed. Zhang Tang, you don't have long to live, he murmured. Then, he turned around and left the roof. Please like and subscribe.